Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we're going to talk about the Fender Parallel Universe Jazz Tele. But first off, what is the Parallel Universe series? This was a limited edition run done in 2018 that composed of 9 guitars. Fender has a tendency to do one of these every year where they release limited edition models throughout the year. So in 2018, their theme was taking their flagship models and mix and matching them with each other to create abominations like this one. A lot of people hated the designs, but at the same time, they created some interesting ones. So there's things like the Strat Tele Hybrid, which was a Tele with 3 single coil pickups, the Jazz Teles, which we're talking about today, the American Elite Tele, which has an HSS pickup configuration, the White Guard Strat, which is kind of like the Strat Tele, but it has the Tele pickups inside of the Stratocaster body, the Tele Thin Line Super Deluxe, the Jaguar Strat, which is kind of cool looking. And then you've got the 51 Telecaster PJ bass, which is actually a mashup of 3 different models. And then the 2 most popular from this series are the Troublemaker Tele, because that's a Telecaster mixed with a Les Paul, kind of making trouble blending yourself with a competitor's guitar. And the most popular and most memorable and most likely to be collectible in the future is the Meteora, because that was a completely new design just based off of a bunch of other cool stuff. So today we're going to talk about Jazz Teles. I couldn't decide which finish I liked better, so I bought both of them. So as the name implies, when a jazz master loves a Telecaster very much, they come together and they create, this abomination over here. It's just kind of a cool blending of all these features, but it's mainly jazz master in styling. Pretty much the only thing it gets from its mother is the body shape right here. Everything else comes from the father's side. So that means you get the tremolo setup from the Jazzmaster. You get the bridge that's actually borrowed from the Mustang. You have the general pickguard layout. It's not quite the same. It's slightly modified, kind of like a thin line Tele, because you can see the differences kind of by the knobs when you compare the two, how they're different. But the necks on the Jazz Teles are actually directly borrowed from the American Pro Jazzmaster guitars. You can also see it's got binding along the neck, so pretty much this guitar is just a Jazzmaster in a slightly smaller body shape. Which, as a guy who's played more Telecasters than Jazzmasters, this was a very comfortable guitar to me because it's very small. It doesn't have all the comfort carves, it's not quite as slippy feeling as compared to a Jazzmaster. It's just all Telecaster, but no Telecaster at the same time. But these guys have true nitro finishes, so that's a premium option on here with the nitro finish on the back of the neck that is satin. They have ash bodies, despite not being able to see it on the surf green finish. That's perhaps one of the best things about getting the two-tone Sunburst over that one, because you do get some very beautiful wood grain on the backside of this one. But those are the only 2 color options you have, and they retailed at $1,999 new. Now, just recently, if you're watching this, they marked them down to $1,599 because, well, they didn't sell as well as they were hoping. So you can pick a new old stock one of these up in 2020 for 20% off the initial asking price. Or you can go to the used market and usually find them a couple $100 cheaper than that. But now that we kind of understand the history behind this model and why it's the way it is, let's go ahead and talk about my first impressions. This guitar felt very familiar to me, and as somebody who still hasn't really sat down too much with the Jazzmaster, I still need to review that Ultra Jazzmaster. I feel like this was a great transition model for me because I actually really enjoyed playing this thing. Because the Telecaster body style is very familiar. As I was saying before, you don't have any of those comfort carves. It's just kind of a blocky feeling, but sometimes that feels nice on an electric guitar, very homely and vintage. And I'm digging the fact that these guys have the nitro finishes as well as the satin finish on the back of the neck. But the thing that I noticed just sitting down and playing this guitar is how slinky they feel. Now, since I'm demoing 2 guitars today, I set this one up in D standard and this one's in E standard tuning. That way, we get a little bit of a difference. But both of them, they have this same phenomenon where they're super slinky to play. And what I mean by that is doing bends is just effortless on this thing. It feels like there's no pressure on these strings. And it's not just because this one's down-tuned. They both have the same phenomenon going on, and they are super loud acoustically. Here's an example of this one. Now here's where it gets interesting, the Telecaster. I mean, it almost sounds completely dead in comparison. So I thought, well, maybe it's just a Jazzmaster thing. And while this one is still louder than the Telecaster, it's not quite as loud as the guys down here. So my best guess is it has something to do with this bridge setup and how this body is routed. Maybe since these bodies are smaller and the Jazzmaster is larger and a little bit bulkier, the more wood that they took out of this to do this additional routing, maybe that's why these are very acoustically resonant. Now, why does acoustic resonance even matter on an electric guitar is probably what some people are wondering. And that's just something that a lot of people feel when they pick up a guitar, they'll just play it and not even plug it in. If it's acoustically resonant and feels good to play, guitarists usually know that they'll sound good once they eventually do plug them in. And you're probably wondering, which one did I prefer just on first impressions? I like this color better in person because I think it just stands out a little bit better and it pairs better with the mint green pickguard. And that's about the only cosmetic complaint I have about these guys is the binding does not necessarily match the mint pickguard and it looks a little bit off. I wish they would have dyed the binding a little bit darker to match the pickguard or maybe just had a crisp white pickguard on these, but I get it. It's kind of a Fender thing to have the mint green guard. But even though I preferred this finish and its lighter weight, ultimately, just the way that it felt, I preferred this one. So despite being heavier and being the finish that I don't prefer, this is actually the nicer playing one without plugging it in yet. So to sum up first impressions here, I was quite happy with these things. They're quirky, but quirky in a good way. Let's go ahead and throw these buddies on the workbench and take a look at their individual parts and specs. Inside the Jazzmaster Tele, I was honestly surprised. I thought I was going to see much deeper routing in here. But the pickup routes themselves are extremely shallow. So I'm not quite sure why this thing is so acoustically resonant, but a lot of it has to come with this bridge route and things like that. But as compared to a regular Telecaster, that is super deep in comparison. And you also have these little channelings there. So it's kind of a mystery, but I do like that we can actually get to the truss rod adjustment right there without removing the neck. That's really helpful. But inside here you have these two foam blocks. That's what sets the heights of the pickup. So as you screw it down, it compresses these and keeps it the way it's supposed to be. And as you loosen up the screws, it puts the pickup up so it's not wobbling around. And you can see the barcode there reads limited edition Telejazz. And you've got some similar barcodes in the bridge pickup route. And I thought the bridge assembly itself was kind of interesting. You've got these plastic spacers that sit over top of the actual little stud in there. That just appears to be a round little metal thing, and the bridge itself just sits in there, and then you adjust that screw for how high or low your bridge is, and that plastic spacer is to secure the fit. That way it doesn't wiggle around. Now apparently this bridge and these barrel saddles were borrowed from the Mustang. And similar to the Ventera Jaguar, it's got one of these bridge setups on it. It's quite a heavy-duty piece of equipment right here, but it just operates on this little spring right there. And the strings go through this little bar and that just attaches to it by using these 3 screws. So it gives it a nice little shimmer effect if you wish to use it. Instead of a pop-in bar on these guys, it's a screw-in style, so that can be helpful. The pickups themselves don't have much going on here. They're just a single coil that's super thin and super wide. There's no huge identification marks on these. I'm guessing that this little blue dot is something that they use to identify them, because the bridge position one has a red dot. But I did not see any barcodes on either of these pickups. But those just connect to a 3-way toggle switch that goes up and down, so you don't accidentally hit it while you're playing. And then you've got a little barcode right there that also matches it to the Telejazz. And you just have a master volume, master tone with CTS pots. And your output jack on the front. And lastly, the pickguard itself has a little inspection sticker right there. Man, I hate taking these Jazzmaster things apart. 27 screws I had to do, in and out. But let's go ahead and grab our pickup measurements here. So with everything full on 10, bridge pickup reads about 7.72-ish. Our neck pickup is 6.69. And in the middle position, about half that, 3.39. And in the Sunburst one, the neck is 6.55, and the bridge reads 6.47. So, oddly enough, this one's actually slightly less hot than that within the circuit, where it's the other way around on the other one. And in the middle for fun, 3.3. The thing I noticed for both of these is maybe this is just a Jazzmaster thing. I hate the orientation of these knobs. So this is full on 10. and this is off. From the player's standpoint, that makes absolutely no sense. So somebody explain that one to me, because I don't get it. Because I'd hate to swap this around to what I'm used to seeing on a Gibson and then find out that, oh, that's why it's supposed to be like that. Moving on here, it is an ash body, but it doesn't appear that we can see the wood anywhere. And just like that one Daybreak Stratocaster, if you get this in the light just right, you can see the wood grain underneath this. It's very hard to see, but if I turn up the brightness of my camera, you can see those small lines. I mean, you really gotta be looking for this stuff, but I guess somebody could see that as a defect. Now that I've seen it on another example, I know it's kind of just to be expected at this point. I think it's important to note that it is a 3-ply pickguard, but moving on to the neck here, you have a rosewood fretboard that has 21 frets, and that is joined on top of a maple neck that's finished in a nitro satin finish, whereas the body has a gloss nitro, and you do have the white binding along the neck. This is not something I'm used to on a Fender guitar. I still think it's really weird how they ended at the top of the headstock there, but it's just something you kind of get used to. And so far, the workmanship on this thing has been pretty good. I do notice if you look at it just right, you can see like little glue lines by the frets. You can kind of see what I'm talking about right there. I mean, it's nothing major. That's just me kind of looking for something, because brand new guitars, no matter how new they are, usually have some sort of flaw to them. But a beautiful rosewood fretboard on here. As far as your fret wire goes, it's the narrow, tall frets, which I personally prefer, and you have the deep C neck profile shape. So it's a little bit chunky, but not overly chunky. And it has a consistent radius of 9.5 all the way up and down. But as far as neck specs go, 1.64 inch nut width, and that increases to 2.03 at the 12th. First fret neck depth, 0.86. The higher up you go, it gets a little bit chunkier, so about 0.98 here at the 12th. Neck specs on the Sunburst, 1.66 inches at the nut, 2.03 at the 12th, with the first fret neck depth of 0.87. And yeah, that's pretty consistent, 0.97 at the 12th. And these guys are doing the 25.5 inch scale length. Now, despite the back of the neck being a satin finish, the face of the guitar, they still do the gloss nitro finish on it. That way it kind of has this nice sheen to it. You can see the difference when they finish over the fretboard from there to there. And I also added a little bit of graphite to the bone nut here. But you have vintage style tuners that you put the string down and then wrap it around the post. You got a single string tree, and you have the Jazzmaster Wispy Winds around the Fender logo. Moving on to the backside here, there's nothing really going on. You don't even have anything going around the edges except for the strap buttons here, which are just your standard Fender style. That's about it. I'm not going to bother taking the neck off because this was sold as brand new, so I think the neck's going to be original, right? So nice satin finish on the back of here. It's just kind of a plain looking maple neck, nothing too crazy, with the vintage style Kluson tuners and your serial number there dating to 2018. And this example weighs 8 pounds 3.2 ounces. And surprisingly, they weigh about the same, 8 pounds, 3.3 ounces. There must be a weight distribution difference between these, because this one feels heavier, like significantly heavier. So it must have a heavier body with a lighter weight neck as compared to the other one. So let's go ahead and plug these guys in and hear how they sound. Now that we know all about the parallel universe jazz tellies, what are my final thoughts and which one did I like the best? Despite this guy being the winner in the unplugged test, once I plugged them in, they were both about the same. So I really don't have anything negative to say about any of these guys. I still prefer the look of this one, but if I had to choose one for my collection, I would probably go with the Tobacco Sunburst just because it's a slightly better player. But plugging these guys in, this is the first Jazzmaster pickups that I've ever played. They have a crazy 60 cycle hum to them. It's like obnoxiously bad. I don't think I'd want to gig with this, but at home you just kind of get used to it. And the tone is ridiculously thin on these guys. But at the same time, you start to get used to that, and it encourages you to play a little bit differently than you normally did. And those are the vibes that I got from these guitars. They were just a little bit different. It was almost like a Stratocaster and a Telecaster combined. Because Stratocasters, I love the neck pickups on those things. They are beautiful sounding. And that's kind of what the neck pickup for the Jazzmaster is doing. It's nice and thin, but very beefy at the same time. But then when you switch it down to the bridge position, it's very trebly and bright, which kind of reminds me of like a Telecaster bridge pickup. They're very well known for having that snap and bite. So I could definitely see this being a lot of people's #1 player if they're looking for that thin, jangly Stratocaster, Telecaster-like blend. So in my opinion, these things, they look a little bit goofy. Not the worst of the Parallel Universe series, but I definitely like them, and I would keep one of these if I was a gigging musician. But do I regret buying both of them? No, definitely not. It was kind of fun to experience the same model in different variations just to see how different they could feel. But once plugged in, they were both pretty darn good. So if you are interested in one of these, I'm going to go ahead and go over the condition of each of these now. Alright, so both of these were floor models at a store for like a year and a half, so they do have some scratches associated with being a floor model. I didn't see any huge nicks or dings off the face of the headstock on this one, just, you know, your light average wear. Your frets are in good shape, they're nice and shiny yet, your fretboard's also in good health. So no need to worry there. You still have the plastic on the pickguard on this one, and I did not see any like huge nicks or dings out of the top of this one, but we do have some dings along the edge I want you to be aware of. There is some finish chipping on this. And the only one I could see was right here. It's a relatively small spot, but definitely there for you to know about. But that is the only blemish that I saw on this one, just a very small chip right there. Everything else is looking good and original. And you also have the original case for both of these. When I bought these, the Tobacco one was advertised as the better condition one. Honestly, it's not. This one definitely sees a little bit more wear than the Surf Green, but very similar at the same time. Just some light scuffs around the edge of the headstock. Nothing too major. Fretboard and frets are also in good shape right here. But on the body, you can definitely see a lot more scratches and light scuffs. And it's mainly because it's a darker finish. It shows everything much more clearly than the lighter colored ones. But everything on the face is pretty good. It's just kind of the same thing as that Surf Green one. The two-tone Sunburst has a little bit more scuffing along the edge. You can kind of see that right there. You can see those scuffing marks you can see those scuffing marks right there. Then as far as chipped finish, there is a small area right here, which I could touch up with a small lacquer pen if you want me to. It wouldn't be an exact match since mine would be black and that's kind of like a really dark brown or something. Then you can see some more scuffs and light indentations along here. So this one's got a little bit more wear, but they're both fairly similar in condition with just a few small nicks and dings along the edges. So if you need absolute perfection as a collectible, yeah, you probably want to pass on these and maybe just get one of the new old stock ones from Musician's Friend or something. But if you're plenty happy with one with just a little bit of wear, you'll like these guys. Blacklight time. Nothing too extraordinary going on here. Your pickups glow and your knobs glow, as do the tremolo tips. But as far as the rest of the guitar, it's just standard stuff. These have not seen any breaks, cracks, or repairs or anything. The only reason why this one looks like it's glowing more than the other is because lighter color versus darker color. Everything's looking good on these guys. If you are interested in one of these Jazz Tellies, they both come in their original Fender hardshell case. You've got the 3 TSA style latches, one has the lock right there, and you have a good handle. And the interior, just your typical gray color. It's kind of a bland case. I wouldn't say it's like super padded, it just kind of feels like there's a bunch of foam in it, but they work. It's actually a universal case, so if you wanted to use it for a Stratocaster, you could as well. But inside here sleeps all your case candy, so you'll at least have the certificate of authenticity in here and Fender booklet on both of them. So what more could you really ask for? If you think you might be interested in being the next owner of this Jazz Telly, you can check out that link in the description, which will take you to the Reverb for sale pages. Thank you, Troglodytes, for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.